So this is Talks with Tim. Here with us today is Tim and Mary Bruce.
So we have found out that Tim is not actually really good at making podcasts, and so Mary Bruce is going to run the podcast from now on because, she could just hit the record button and go, and Tim has to, think about these things. Maybe Tim just thinks too much.
It's, what do I think about?
Oh, no, we don't even have a script for this. What are we going to do? Well, we do know what we're going to do because, at the end of the last podcast, we said that, we probably should talk some about gender in education and gender in what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Which, by the way, if I didn't say it earlier, because Mary kind of already had said it, hi, this is Tim, and welcome to Talks with Tim. And I do have Mary Bruce Clemens with me today, and we've been having some great conversations during taking breaks from doing some work down here at the PLC lab. And we were going to talk about gender, and I'm trying to think, where did we leave off in the last one, really?
It started with Legos being made in purple.
Yeah.
And then it went into aesthetics. And I had kind of expressed the opinion that I feel like females kind of get a little bit more encouragement on trying to take an interest in aesthetics of their work than males have been, and that's coming just from my own personal experiences in different education environments. And I relate that back to the making of food, the making of clothes, the making of home, and things like that. And that, unfortunately, the wings of the butterfly for the male taking interest in form happens only if they've got a personally driven interest in it, or they're, the carrot of money, like, we'll pay you more if you can make this look better, that type of thing.
We end up with the more practical side of things.
It seems that way.
Just needs to get done. But we did talk about, you were in, what were you in?
It was an interior design class, and one of the first lectures that I got was to take note on form and function of things. Specifically, the professor gave us the objective to go to Walmart and look at the objects that are sold just in the kitchen. She said just in the kitchen accessories area, because there's a lot of engineering in the kitchen accessories area. It's one of my favorite departments to look at because there's always a gadget, and they all have different articulations. She said you'll see the same gadgets in the Walmart kitchen accessory place as you will in the Walmart one. Same word that I just said. Hold on.
Target.
Walmart and Target both have kitchen areas, and they both have similar gadgets. But the gadgets that are in Target have a lot more thoughtful design implemented, and Target sources their stuff from actual artists and designers and people that are interested in form and function together.
But okay, so in that situation, were you able to see your peers, what they did? Did you see a difference between male and female, interpretations?
Yeah, but that's a whole nother thing. That interior design class had probably 300 students in it, and there's maybe one male.
Oh,
He
wow.
dropped out by the middle of that semester. So
Now, you think he dropped out out of lack of interest, or because he was the only guy in the class and it was really awkward?
I would say lack of representation, because there's a lot to be interested in, because we hadn't even gotten into the interiors yet. We were studying a lot about civil engineering and aesthetics, which is incredibly important. In my other art classes that I got involved in, it was a much heavier split down the middle. There were males and females pretty evenly concentrated in both of those. The art education realm had more females. And education fields in general ended up with more females. And I think that has to do with representation also, because there are a lot of men that are incredible educators, especially to children. I actually got the privilege of working with one male educator at the nonprofit that I worked for, that I've never seen an educator work that proficiently with kids, not of any gender. And he was harassed by people around us all the time for that, and it sucked because he's pretty young, and so he'll take that with him forever, that he got shamed for teaching children well. And that came from other men, the majority of it, and so that stinks. So
rolling it back, in high school, you also, was it shop class, or what were you in there?
Yeah, so I wanted to get into auto mechanics so bad, but my mom was like, no. So I was like, well, what about shop? Look, my grandmother did woodworking. Like, there's a correlation. So she finally said okay to shop. and I was loving it. And then after a while, I just realized that there was no one for me to identify with without it being a situation in that class. So I ended up, I lost my guts, and I didn't want to be in that situation every time I tried to make a conversation with someone about how to measure, how to cut.
Were you the only?
I was the only female. Yep. There was one other female, but she dropped out the week before me, and then after that, I was like, dang.
And that's why I wonder, how much of it is just the pressure of not being there. Because I was sharing with Mary before, and I was talking to an instructor, and it was intro, first week of engineering, and there's like 25 students in there, and one of them's female, and he goes through the whole spill, and at the end of the spill, he's like, "Are there any questions?" And the girl raises her hand. He's like, "Yeah, where are the rest of the girls at?" And really, she was fully capable, and she did not finish the class either.
Yeah.
And which is a shame, but how much of it was that she wasn't cut out of it, and how much of it was that that class was 96% male.
I mean, when you can't if you can't, it doesn't even have to be in the row behind you, but if anywhere in the class you can't look to someone for a control group of agency, like just communication, whether it's just the borrowing of objects, I'll repay you next week, that kind of thing, it makes it difficult to learn because you're thinking about your social strata in addition to trying to get an education. I don't know if there's a solution to that other than just more representation in all fields.
Yeah. Well, I think it does work both ways because we also talked about, I took a cooking class in high school, and I think I was the only guy there, and I was really just interested in, hey, I'd like to learn to, cook some. And it's like, okay, where are all the guys? Is there no other guys cooking? So probably the same awkwardness. Now, I didn't make it through the class, and I learned how to cook some very delicious things.
That's good.
How much of it is it the existing gap is causing this, and how much it is that I guess it's not welcoming or not feel, where is the issue, I guess? Or is it complex? Is it more than one spot?
I'm sure it's many spots. I'll go back to Target because they're trying.
Uh-huh.
I appreciated that they've come out with a line of toys that encompasses the entire color scheme, and I feel like for folks that maybe haven't been as driven to find out why there is a gender gap, toys, a broom that is not pink is fantastic. Like, we don't need to make a pink broom, okay? Doesn't need to be pink. And because nobody, those colors were assigned a long time ago, and they were actually supposed to be for the opposite gender, so it doesn't even make sense. Like, girls were actually assigned light blue, and boys were assigned light pink, and somewhere along, there's a whole, I'll send you the podcast. It's great. And
that's fascinating.
It is. It doesn't make any sense, and so that we're doing that at all, because a child is a child is a child. A child is a child. Like, all we're doing is making sure that child knows how to not chop its hands off and not swallow things that are going to make it die. Like, those are the things that we need to be focused on, not who its boyfriend's going to be when it's a toddler and how many people their daddy's going to have to shoo off from them and all that stuff. Like, none of that needs to be said to children at all. And I think a lot of that is where that subconscious conditioning happens for the gender gap. So now that Target has taken it upon itself to not have an entire row of pink and an entire row of blue, that they're trying to mitigate and put these things in between each other, because if you have a parent that was raised on the girls get the pink stuff, they're going to go down the pink aisle, right? These are the things that we can select from to form our baby's brain. And unless they're dedicated on breaking that cycle, we got other stuff we got to do. We got to go get food from the food section, like, we can't spend a whole lot of time cerebrally thinking about how that psychology affects our kid and what it does to them 30 years ago or 30 years from now. But the few dudes that were in my home ec class, we were very grateful for, because they added a lot of duality to the stuff that we had been conditioned to do since we were, 5 years old. When we make cookies, we make it this way. And they're like, well, how about we do it like this? And it was great. We were like, dang, that's way cooler. Like, thanks for making this a whole lot more interesting.
So what do we do, or what can we do to help with the gender gap? Because, I mean, even on this channel, I mean, it's so insanely sad to say that this channel a few years ago was 99% male. And now it's 91% male, which is an insane improvement. But that's still pretty freaking pitiful that only 9% of women are interested in automation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you're in it now. What do you think? Is it a male only thing? Do you feel like you're just out of place and this isn't for you and it's just kind of until you find your women gig, or do you enjoy it? Or
no, I've known that I've been I come across other females that know that the gender situation is less about what it is. It's trying to get in there. And every once in a while we'll run into a couple of males that are like, you know, you've got an art brain, you think about it differently. The words that you use are, you know, not scientific enough and stuff like that. Just kind of give it a minute before you react, you know, and just kind of accept that there is validity in it, even if it isn't the words that you would have chosen. We don't know those words until we learn them. Mm-hmm. 9% growth in a period of time is a lot, you know, especially for an entire industry. So I mean, that's a lot. But no, it doesn't have anything to do with gender. None of it does. But it does have to do with industry. And a long time ago, we had structures that we no longer have to do.
well, and even a lot of the structures are still there. I mean, we can't hide that part. There are certain plants that we go into, and it's still going to be all male. You know, all the front staff, all the office are going to be all the women, mm-hmm. and all the workers in the back are going to be men. And there is no reason for that,
but I know how it got that way, mm-hmm. and I know that it can get that way. Mm-hmm. And I do know that the lady in the front of the house knows how to do their job and also knows how to do a lot of other stuff. Not saying that she's superior to them at all, but to discount that she can't go back there and do that, I don't think that that's on the table anymore as the discussion. It's just, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, we need someone that is, I had a boss one time that said, you're not attractive enough to offend other women, but you're attractive enough to get business for males. And I was like, you're a dog? You're a dog. You're a dog. But but he laid it out. He's like, you are able to flow between those two lines, and that's something that I'm not able to do. Obviously, I'm a jerk. Like, clearly, I'm a jerk. So, like, there's some places that I can't exist in, you know? And I'm like, you're right. You should go back to your hole. Like, and not because he's listening, but because, like, the things that he was saying to me, he knew that I wasn't going to, like, freak out on him. You know, he knew that it's coming from a place of, this is what we've been handed. How do we make industry out of it? How do we make money with it, doing what we're doing? How do we use our strengths and weaknesses? Obviously, I shouldn't be sending customer service emails. Like, you know, like, how can you get the point across without, you know, getting sued? And I'm like, well, I guess I won't sue you, and I will have that conversation out loud with other people, because those are things that are said to people, and that's how people are hired. You know, like, how do I get someone compliant enough and not compliant enough to be able to navigate this system in our industry? And it's a toss-up. This one might not get aired.
No, it's going on.
I worked for that man though, but because he said that out loud, because I didn't have to guess that that's what he was navigating with me, because he just laid it on the table. He's like, listen, this is the deal. I worked for him for like 10 or 15 years.
Holy crap.
That's a huge difference in time period. But I mean, I appreciated that he was like, listen, I will pay you, and I will be a good person. And relatively, he said, but the things that I'm going to say are not for everybody. And he made up for that with cash money. So that was great.
So was that right or wrong?
I don't know, but I know that he knew the difference, and he knew that it needed to be discussed. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated him rather than shoving it under the table.
You're right. Instead of hearing about it behind, you know, at least he was up front, I guess. Because
I would have left that job if I had figured out that he was talking about that at a bar with someone that he wasn't in business with. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was selling my time to him to do a job, and I was appreciative that he was willing to have the conversation with me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important, is to kind of discuss that stuff. It's a risky conversation, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I could have said, you know, I could have responded in a million different ways. But I've been trying to, because the things that I want to learn have been handed to the males, and it's a little bit harder for females to get in there. You have to be able to listen to that stuff you don't have to listen to anything. You don't have to put up with anything. But if you are trying to identify with the people that know the field, and you want to learn the actual trades that they're doing, there is a level of rhetoric that you will hear. It doesn't mean you have to believe it. Doesn't mean you have to identify with it. Doesn't mean you have to take it personally. Doesn't mean that it says anything about you at all. It actually says more about them. But they did talk about it.
Right.
And we're not going to get anywhere unless we can talk a little bit about it.
Well, and you're right there. You're right.
We also
Hey, can we clarify that I'm not that boss?
You're not that boss. No, you're not that boss. And I really appreciate that. I mean that boss. Although our industry was taking photographs of a female organization like it for their presentations, and so what he said was valid for that point because those women were very much. Image was their industry. They were a fundraising organization. I mean, they dressed to the nines. If I had been a person that was overwhelmingly projecting on others that I was elite to them and younger and all of these things, it would have offended their senses. They would have spent less money. There is marketing in navigating that psychology. Is it right? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, But I remembered that, and I think basically what he could have said is be humble, don't be, that would have worked too. But, but that I don't know what that person's educational experiences have been,
And maybe, he just wanted to go ahead and get it out there. Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Because whether we like it or not, we can act, even now, we can act like everything is perfect and everything is even. But it's not.
No, we got.
Obviously, there is a reason that, and I don't know the statistics of male to female in our industry. I just know what I read on our YouTube statistics. That 91% male, 9% female. There are some things, and maybe we should applaud him for just going ahead and laying it out there instead of, acting like everything is perfectly even.
If he had tried to say that particular person, if he had tried to say that in some other way, I wouldn't have gotten what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. I mean, my brain it learns differently, and I almost have to have it be presented in a really derogatory way. I don't want it to be to other people because they're able to see the slights through that, and I'm just trying to get to the objective. Like, I'm less concerned about the slights, more concerned about the objective. The objective was to make as much money as I could, and obviously not hang out with him a whole lot. Now, did we laugh a lot and did we cut up and have like really, really awful jokes? Yeah, and it was all right, and we found out a lot about how to cater to that situation. The males that were on that photography team with me got sexually harassed every day. I mean, we were working with all women that were above the age of 40 to 90. I mean, I wasn't having to incur the 3 sentences that I had to listen to from him to set the tone of what we're doing here. I mean, those dudes, it made me uncomfortable, and I'm like, damn, I was uncomfortable for a sentence. They're uncomfortable for as long as we're on this job. Like, I was so grateful, on how that worked out. I was like, thank God I'm not in that situation because I would lose it. And you almost get defensive of your peers. You're like, it's not okay to just touch somebody, okay? Like, don't do that. And but that's, I don't know. We got a Magic Mike photographer situation going on. Poor dude. Old ladies. How do we get on this? Gender gap?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. Is that, do we need to steer it back or do we keep going down this trail? I'm not sure where we're at. We were talking about the gender gap. Trying to figure out, one, why it's there. And I think we kind of established that. I think the grand question is, how do we close it? And somebody, and I'll go ahead and throw it out there because I guarantee you every time, in fact, I think, because and I guess we didn't mention this, Mary has been on our channel before with Amber. She was in the Women in Engineering series. And even in that, when somebody asks, well, do we really need to close the gap or do we need to get more people in the industry? Well, okay, if 9% of women are in and 91% male, if you want to get more people in our industry, it's pretty obvious which is the larger target. And so we do need to close the gap. Even if you say, well, we just need to get more people. Well, okay, if you want to get more people, you definitely have to include women and probably need to lean harder on them. It's how do we close this? How do we include or make it acceptable. And I think that's kind of probably the deal is how do we make it acceptable to be in shop class and be a woman, or, how do we integrate the A into STEM and make it STEAM where, helping, man, I really want to go back to almost the whole Michelangelo conversation of where does art end and engineering begin? Or is it kind of more of like, I don't know, something like that.
I think there's a marrying of all of that. I do think that the art, because of the way that history has unfolded for the genders, for us to get to this part of where we are, is that A is a really good way to get a greater variable in, and because it pulls from a lot of different minds. And art is a place where it seems like both genders steep together as equals. Like, it's not this because you were raised on a farm and your dad made you work on a whole bunch of cars. This because you were raised in a household filled with, having to caretake your elders and literally your youngers and literally everybody. The art is a place where both genders kind of come together equally. I think that's incredibly beneficial because if that can happen in any realm, then it can happen in others.
Well, since we are talking about the gender gap.
Yes.
Do you think art's been excluded from engineering?
On purpose?
On purpose?
Yeah, totally. But I also think that, when someone goes to school for 11 years to learn how to do math on the fly that has to do with suspension bridges, I do think that it has less to do with diminishing of a gender. It has to do with the righteousness of that time, if you haven't put that time in, but if we don't welcome it and we start gatekeeping, then it ends up trickling down in really strange ways. Like, I don't think anybody wanted women to not be involved in trade. They literally couldn't because people had to feed the things. And if you don't feed the things, then they die, and then people get mad at you, and I mean, just the way that U.S. history has unfolded, the way that all of it has transpired, there's a way to fix it too. Like, if this is an entire field, there's 5 letters in that acronym. Great, thank God. There's 5 letters in that acronym, and then all of them are based on problem solving. And so that's the commonality on all of them, is how do we solve this problem? The way that U.S. history is unfolded, this is what we have. This is the mixed bag that we've got, and there's a way to fix it. I think that art is the way to do it, because everybody has value there. No one's wrong there. No one.
Well, and okay, if we're going to cross those, we've talked about it many times. If you're programming a PLC, is anyone wrong if in the end it works? Isn't that kind of similar?
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah. And I think that but it's possible that it didn't have anything to do with keeping women out intentionally. It's possible that because art has no wrong answer subjectively, that's extremely contentious to the other fields in which there is absolutely clear and identifiable wrong answers. Maybe science. I think science is probably like evolutionary biology, things like that, is the closest thing that it gets to art on just theories. And then as time goes on, we can see with enough data that this is true, because everything's a theory until it's not. But I think that it's contention because there is no wrong answer to art. But that's the entry point. That's the gateway learning.
Well, now there's no doubt that women have been kept out of this field, and it's really interesting. It just popped in my head, and I don't even know if well, I didn't even ask my sister, obviously, because it just came up on the top of my head. I hope she's okay. We talked about it, but I remember, I believe it was for her bachelor's, part of her research was into how after World War II, so much propaganda was done to really get the woman back into the household. Because really they had, during World War II, they were running the factories. They were doing all the things that we're talking about. And there was a intentional, can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it was there was intentional propaganda done to try to reset the status quo to what it was before the war.
But it doesn't help you guys either.
Yeah.
The whole thing has been set up to make both genders feel like they are lacking something, and they're not. We're all multifaceted humans that have interests in vastly different things, and we're all capable of all of the things that they keep projecting on us. And it's unfortunate because you guys I think that the box that dudes have been pushed into is a lot smaller than the ones that we've kind of been pushed into, because we can navigate making anything about that having to do with STEAM, you know? And it's unfortunate because I feel like a lot of the bullying comes from other males. So males bullying males when they're trying to experience something that has been qualified as a female industry. That's not okay. Stop it. Stop doing that. That's not okay. Stop bullying people for that stuff. I guess I get so upset when I think about that educator getting bullied by other dudes. I'm like, you're just mad because you don't know how to talk to a kid. Like, that's all you're doing. You're just mad because these kids think he's awesome because he is, and you're being a Grumposaurus Rex, and you're mad about it. That's it.
And even let's look at the last decade, nursing even, you know, if you're going to
Absolutely.
You know, I know it's grown tremendously, but male nurses to female nurses, obviously there's a big disparity.
It is, and that's unfortunate because when you're in a spot of weakness, when you need a nurse, and you're a man, it would be really great to have another man help you. It would be great because, especially if you're extremely traditional, that's very helpful. But we've gotten ourselves in these gender roles. It's been passed to us from the great they of beyond. And we don't need to do that. And it would be wonderful if the they of us could just say, no, we need to do what we want to do. If I'm a caretaker, it doesn't matter if I'm female or male. If I want to do that, that's what I'm going to do. And I don't know. Maybe rebrand the word nurse or something like they did a waiter. You know, there used to be waitresses and waiters. Now there's a waiter, a hostess, and a hostess just hosts. And I appreciate those things because why do we need to know? Why do we need to know? It goes back to the people being pregnant and like their peers being mad because they didn't know what gender it was. Why do you need to know what's in my baby's diaper? It doesn't have anything to do with you. Nothing. It's so strange.
Oh. How many people do you think we offended with this one?
Oh, probably not enough.
Not.
Another reason, you know, because it verges on some of the nasty rhetoric that is said on purpose, you know, and this isn't a nasty rhetoric that's said on purpose. These are learned experiences that we have. This is learned from media. This is learned from culture. This is learned from actual U.S. history. This is learned from world history. And so in order to try to assimilate where we want to go, because where we've been has already happened. Where we want to go is we want to see a more even divide. And I don't think we can get there by not discussing the conversations that have been being had that created the culture in the first place. And so it sucks, but I told somebody the other day, I was like, I'm so glad that I took the time to I forced my dad to get to know me, you know, like I just dad was like, now I'm not even appearing, like, oh, we gotta talk about this. And he's like, oh, this is so detail oriented. I just can't. So it's important to just note it that those things have been said. Not to every person, not to every male, not to every female, but the people that are capable of having the conversation. Let's maybe entertain it.
Anything else, or do you think we ought to see what feedback we get on this?
I'm a little bit scared to let this one out. Because there will be feedback. But I do think
there's always feedback.
I mean, that's important, you know? Feedback is important.
Yes, I'm used to the negative feedback. I'll be fine with it. Well, I look forward to everybody's comments and feedback and hopefully constructive conversations about, you know, one, if you're watching this and male, but also especially if you're a female, how do you feel about even watching a video on this channel? Does it feel like, oh gosh, there's that male again, and I guess I have to listen to him to get through my class? I would love to hear your feedback. Till next time. Hi, this is Tim.
And this is Amber with TW Controls. Hey, thanks for finding our channel.
Here's a playlist with some similar videos.
And YouTube thinks you'll like these.
When you're ready for some intense PLC training, check out our PLC lab.
And if our videos have helped you out and you're not using our products, please consider supporting us on Patreon.
Till next time.
See ya!